Okay, in this tutorial, we are going to consider the three bullet points, the last three bullet points that go with task 5. You should have already completed your pie chart, and that should now be stuck in your jotter below this heading. Now you're going to consider, what does this information show? Well, the first task asks you to, below the pie chart, write a first paragraph that describes what the pie chart shows. In this paragraph, you should use information from the pie chart. Now, I'm going to give you an idea about what you should be writing, and then you're going to pause the video and write my suggestions, or write whatever you write should be based on what your pie chart shows. So let's have a look at my imaginary pie chart. The first thing that jumps out is that the most common business are restaurants, cafes, and pubs. We can see that because it's the biggest pie, and I would want to write that straight away. I wouldn't just want to say that it's the most common. I'd want to say, in this case, that 42%, I've just rounded down, by the way, of the businesses were in St Andrews were restaurant, cafes, or pubs. Okay, I might then want to talk about the second most common, and even the third most common type of business. Do I need to talk about all the types of businesses? No, not necessarily. Okay, what's important though is that you identify the most important and you give me the amounts. You might want to tell me about the least important. So for example, you might have had one of your categories was a 0, you had no businesses, and therefore it doesn't appear on the pie chart, but you might want to actually tell me that. If we have a quick little think about what our data was showing, we had no food supermarket or off licenses in St Andrews recorded. That was based on this data. Remember, you yourself will have different data, possibly. So if that's the case, we're going to want to possibly write about that, say that there were no businesses, or that the least common type of business was bookshops and newsagents. If, of course, once again, if that data matches your own. Okay, what else do you want to do before finishing this paragraph, apart from telling me the story about what the most common and what the least common were and giving me the amounts? You want to also tell me, are more of your shadings light shadings or dark? So what you want to do here is add up all of the businesses that you thought were very dependent on tourism, and you should have allocated to them either a light shading or a dark shading. And does that add up to more than 50, or how much? So for example, I might have 70% of my businesses, so 70% of these are businesses would argue are mainly reliant on tourism. And if that's the case, I'm going to want to say that. Or if 70 or 60 or whatever you do when you add them up of your businesses that you've identified as being touristy businesses, give me that amount. And then tell me about the other, the non-tourist. So the slices that you shaded dark, which you are telling me are not needing tourists in order to survive. Add them up and tell me their amount. What this is going to do is it's going to tell me, is St Andrews got more businesses that rely on tourists, or has it got more businesses that don't rely on tourists? And of course, that's a decision you have to take. What do you think? Which businesses are likely to rely on tourists? Okay, that is, you completed task 1, so the first of the 3 written tasks. So can I suggest you pause the video now, write that up, and then move on to the second bit? Okay. We're now on to the second bit. You've now described the different types of businesses and what are the most common, and you've also told me whether there are more tourist businesses or not. You now have to write a second paragraph that explains why there are so many certain types of shops in St Andrews. So, why are there a certain number of cafes, restaurants? Why are there certain numbers of golf shops? Why are there certain numbers of whatever your data goes with? So if I'm looking at my sheet and I know what the most common is, I would be wanting to say, so why are there so many clothing and shoe shops in a town like St Andrews? What reason could I give? Now, don't worry if your reasons are wrong. I'm just looking for you to give reasons. So if there are lots of gift shops that you identified, why is that? Almost 10% of our businesses are golf related. Why is that? Why are they university related shops? So you are having to explain. That is giving a reason. Explaining is where you use the because word. Okay? So pause the video now and write as much as you think is suitable that really gives me an understanding that you know why there is different numbers of different types of businesses. Okay, I'm now assuming you've written your first two paragraphs. So you're now listening to the final step, the third step. Now write a final paragraph that explains what would happen to St Andrews if tourists stop coming. Now, let's just say, as we found out during the pandemic, people were not allowed to go on holiday places and we couldn't travel. So St Andrews therefore had a lot less tourists. What type of impact would that have? Now, this does say explain. So if there are a lot less tourists, how would this affect St Andrews? So let's think about how important tourists are to St Andrews. What do tourists do when they go to St Andrews? How does that affect the lives of the people that live there? Is it a positive effect? So there are positive things that tourism brings to the people of St Andrews. There are also sometimes negative things. So if tourists stopped, that might also cause some good things to happen for the people of St Andrews. So think about the positive and the negative effects that would happen to the people of St Andrews if tourism was to stop, as we saw in the pandemic. Now, the more ideas you can think of, the higher the mark you'll get for this final bit. And this final one does require you to really think and write a good, detailed paragraph. Good luck.